Hello, I think we are recording. Now we are. Hello.
There we go. Hey, hi. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. Okay, let's get right into it.
You,
Dyslexia.
you
Yes.
look bright and fresh in the middle of Ramadan. That's completely unfair.
9:30 p.m.
Right? It's the beginning. It's the beginning of Ramadan, right?
It is. It is. It is the
Okay.
beginning. We're
And I know you're
fasting. We're in it.
I know you're going to jump in with questions. So before you do, it's Ramadan, which for people who don't know, it's a holiday where they flip their nights and days with their food and stuff and stay up and it's crazy. But everybody's so spiritually connected. It's a beautiful thing. I've been invited many times.
That's so sweet.
What I want to say about it though is I have this family that I work with that's fantastic with their son who's, minimally verbal and has all these challenges. He's doing really great. But he still chooses what he wants to give up for Ramadan and he still participates. And I just want to begin and say, it's okay. By whatever means or in whatever way, include your children.
Mm,
Include your children in the world you live in. So often I go into homes where they exclude them. They go, oh, special needs doesn't need to be included in this because they're exempt. Well, even if they're exempt by your spiritual beliefs, please include them for the family feeling and find a way to have them do some portion of it.
I love
Even
that.
even if it's not don't eat until late at night after the sun goes down. Right.
And there is something I shared something on Instagram the other day about it's the autistic cats. It's those three autistic I think they're girls and a boy. And anyway, this girl was saying how she actually finds so much relief in doing spiritual practices, as whether it's the repetitive pattern of it or just being with herself. And I thought that was so beautiful that she was able to relate the two, whether God is in there or not. It was just such a nice analogy. My brother actually fasts.
Ah, that's awesome. I think I
Pretty
did know
crazy.
that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
pretty crazy. I don't know
yeah.
how he does it, but yeah, the rules
Good
are there
for
and he
him.
likes it.
Good for him. Good for him. Okay,
um,
so what were you
okay,
gonna ask?
so dyslexia, any sort of, reading difficulties, spelling difficulties. I get that a lot with lots of parents. And it's really hard to, I understand as a parent, it must be hard to just be patient and try to guide them. And obviously this comes in the whole attention issue. And so we try to tackle it with neurofeedback, doing parietal work. But at the end of the day, even if you do help with neurofeedback, I'm very aware that the work we do alongside behaviorally will also make a lot of difference. So please give us some tips about
Okay, so that's a really huge umbrella. Yes, usually if it's traditional, it's incorrect terminology. If it's your typical kind of dyslexia, where the person's, dressing backwards or reading backwards or that sort of thing, it's usually on the left parietal that you'll see a change with neurofeedback. That's usually something we can work with in that way. Sometimes you take that left parietal and attach it to the frontal, which is sort of
that.
the input of language and the output of language. Sometimes that'll straighten it out. But dyslexia is a much bigger thing than that. Before I explain that, I want to hit on when you said the work we do alongside it. You cannot just ask the brain to be different and not then give an opportunity to practice difference by you being different too. So let's say that we used neurofeedback and we change or invite the brain to change how it processes sound, how it processes what it sees. We may not even be on the parietal lobes, we may be on the occipital lobe where, you traditionally see. Apparently, I like the word traditionally today. It must be Ramadan doing that to me. Anyways, so if you do that with neurofeedback, and then everybody after the session starts saying, are you seeing this backwards? Or, you know, I know you always get this B and D mixed up, then you're reinforcing the opposite and you're bringing back the problem that we're just trying to turn, because it takes repetition and opportunity, and people will go the path of least resistance. If you expect me to behave a certain way, it's easier for me to behave that way. If you expect it, in fact, here in America, we have a lot of horrible things happening right now with the police shootings, especially when it's the Black people and the police. Well, the Black person thinks, uh-oh, I'm in danger from the police. And the police goes, yeah, you are. Or the police goes, you're a Black person, I'm in danger, I better shoot you. Like, there's this expectation, and that's how big expectation gets. That's how much it can control you, all the way out to that. So if we can come down into this moment of, yes, we'll do neurofeedback for these things, but you have to follow that with a changed world as well. Or you will recreate what we just tried to shift away from.
Yeah.
And that's why I designed my play as a sort of behavioral responding play, so that you're interested, you're having a good time, you're paying attention. But in a sense, we're doing play feedback or biofeedback through play, or I have such a hard time thinking of a name for it. So we hit on these changes and support them as we do neurofeedback. And that, if you don't have the neurofeedback at home, people, do that part. Do the part where you see the child is switching their B and their D. They can't discern them, or they've got them backwards, or they're confused by them, or their dresser drawers, you know, they think the top one's the bottom one. All that stuff happens with dyslexia. And when you see that, instead of saying you have this problem, say, oh, I love it when I get things backwards. Let's make some backward stuff. Now let's make some frontward stuff. Make it a fun thing that draws attention to the correction without them being told that they're broken, and without them being told that they have this problem. But rather, this is a moment in time, even if it's the millionth moment in time. So that's super important, whether it's dyslexia, whether it's autism, whatever it is. No matter what therapy, whether you're using a dietary approach, too many families go, oh, we're going to change the gut. And then they don't do the rest of the stuff. If the child is feeling different, if you feel different, but nobody teaches different, you're going to keep learning what was there before. In fact, if your brain is better at learning because of those changes, you're going to be better at learning these negative things you're being taught because everyone's expecting it of you. So it's super important, super important. So dyslexia. You know, there's behavioral dyslexia, like, well, I talk about potty a lot because it shows up a lot in autism. So wipe and then poop is a behavioral dyslexia.
I had no idea. Okay.
Yeah. Doing everything sort of in the wrong order. And it does show up, especially in the more challenged autistic community. You'll see behavioral dyslexia often. So
does that mean you have automatically both?
Well, you mean, how do I shift it, or what's your actual question?
I mean, do you also have behavioral dyslexia if you have just normal dyslexia?
Is it a sub disorder inside a bigger disorder? Can be, doesn't have to be. Doesn't have to be, because your behavioral stuff and your base, you know, how you move in your body, your balance system, all that, these are all different kind of locations, and anything can operate backwards. It's kind of like how you can have synesthesia and you can see sound, or you can taste squares, or you can, like, anything can get mixed up and go in the wrong order or be processed incorrectly. But you can have behavioral dyslexia. So I mention that because it's the least known one, and very often very frustrating for parents. They go, there's no logic, right? But if you think, wow, they're doing it backwards, just add it again. So teach in a case like this, because the wiping, since that was my example, in the case like that, you want to teach wipe, poop, wipe. Now they'll probably still think wipe, poop because they did it backwards, but you've taught 3 steps. So now you can do wipe, poop, wipe. And even if they're backwards, it's still, so watch, wipe, poop, wipe, or wipe, poop, wipe.
Okay, so it's, okay.
So backwards or forwards, it comes correct, right? So sometimes, duck lower.
You can say hi.
Crawl on your belly. He's the dad that plays with the baby really well in the background.
He is. The dad who plays really well with the baby.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Learn from the best.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the compliment, by the way. So sometimes instead of pulling your hair out on this, because you'll get frustrated and then you'll say things that reinforce the problem and we're never going to get anywhere. Just you think logically, how can I turn this into, no matter what way you do it, you succeed? And now I don't care if you extra wipe. I don't care if you wiped before you pooped, if you wipe after you poop. Right.
The question is, so, eventually would that be?
Who cares?
Okay.
Who cares? So let's say you're always wearing, I mean, there's no way to really check on that because now they've got habits that are independent and you're not checking on them all the time, right?
Which is the point.
Okay. Right, which is the point. You get to do things your way and it's okay if you're a little different. So if how you've learned with your shirt is, okay, the label going at the back isn't a good one anymore because now they stamp it a lot of the time or it washes off or the kids hate it and you have to cut them off and you can't find it. But I'll use it as an example anyways. Or let's use string in the front. So jogging pants have their string in the front. And if you have behavioral dyslexia, you'll probably always want to put the string in the back. Right? You can do stuff for that. You can make it so there's a string in the back of, in the actual back, so that when you say string in the front, they put it backwards and they got it right. So sometimes you accommodate it and you go, okay, I'm going to make it so that you're successful. Sometimes you can do that 3-step that I showed you. And sometimes you have to do an adapted version of the clothing or the activity. But the minute that they're doing it right, you follow. So if you do an adapted version, you follow with, you know what? I actually moved your string to help you. Look, your pockets are in the right place, right? And so because there's no stress being added, the ability to notice, and then you kind of laugh and, okay, if this works for you, that's fine. You have this little pinned on string at the back, whatever. This follow-up moment, same with the wiping. This follow-up moment that you smell so good. Oh, I love that your pants are on the right way. Isn't that a cool trick we came up with? Brings their attention to their problem in a very different way and usually corrects the problem. When it doesn't, you've already corrected it with an adaptation. So in special needs, in very afflicted brains, there's going to be a combination of that. You'll see healing and change, and you'll adapt to lighten the load. If you don't do both, it's too much. You see? Like people want normal. If you go after normal and you refuse to adapt anything, I promise you'll get stuck in a big way. And it'll be uncomfortable and your child will stay very, very challenged. So you want to mix that. It's like sign language. If you're using sign language, and the sign for toilet is difficult, especially for anybody who has fine motor issues, because it's a letter T and it's right. So different sign languages have different ones, but that's the one we use. So a lot of people go, It's simple. It's fine. It's a
Mhm.
sign. It doesn't matter. You can adapt and it's obvious. So be comfortable with adaption. All right. So that's behavioral dyslexia, which you probably never heard of. And if you're struggling with that, I hope I helped. At least get you thinking.
I didn't know there was a word for it, I guess.
I actually invented the word because nobody knew what to call it. And it's
Oh,
just
okay.
love.
So it's not a okay.
Good luck looking that up.
Okay.
It's a thing. It's a thing everyone complains about, and they do. You can look up auditory dyslexia, so you can hear
Yes.
back,
Yes.
right?
This
And there may be behavioral dyslexia. You may find it because it's a logical thing to call it. So I can't say that it's not there. Um, so auditory dyslexia. So here you have this child and you think they're ignoring you all the time, but a lot of the time they literally are hearing you backwards. Well, I probably wouldn't be on the left parietal lobe for auditory dyslexia. I would check and see, is it worse on one side than the other, which it very often is. Very often they do better. Let's say they hear better if everyone's standing on the right and get all confused when people are standing on the left. That would help me to know neurofeedback wise, but it also helps me to know behaviorally. So if I see that, you have to play with it. If you don't, and I made this mistake, I have a son with auditory dyslexia, and I didn't know all these things then that I wish I knew. And so it was frustrating as a parent to sometimes he heard me right, other times it was like gobbledygook, blah, 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 right?
mm,
And it looked behavioral. It looked like he was being resistant. And I often was frustrated with it. And it wasn't until we got it diagnosed that I went, oh my gosh, I got to work with this. And I don't even know that they knew of auditory dyslexia when I first adopted him. So I probably couldn't have got that information till later. But regardless, I had to undo a lot. And if you're new to this, please take it on. So if they're, because then I'll feel better about what I did. So, so let's say that they're not as problematic on the right field, for example, than on the left. Now you can play with it. You can go over there and say it and then say, hey, let's help that processing in your left ear. I'm going to say the same thing over here. You can make games like that. You can, and then when you see them with friends or in locations where it will be hard on their self-esteem to be wrong, because they'll just make it up. They'll pretend, and then you're in this whole new world, right? That's where we ended up, and it's difficult. So just reseat everyone, help them adapt, do the adaption part where you go, okay, better on this side than the other. Truth is, if they have auditory dyslexia on both sides as strong, like quite strong, you probably won't get it diagnosed. You won't figure it out. It's gonna be time before that happens. You'll have done some neurofeedback, some changes will have happened. There'll be one side better than the other at some point. They'll just look like they can't understand language because they can't, because what
mm.
they're hearing is all noise, right? You'll have to deal with that first. But if one side is better than the other, you can now use adaption and you can use responding by going, hey, I'm going to say, I love you over here. Now I'm going to say it over here. I love you. What did it sound like? And then they say it back and it's hilarious and it's fun.
Okay.
Okay.
How about
Now, the one, the typical dyslexia that everyone thinks about, again, there's a lot of variety here. Often people are told they have dyslexia when they have Erland syndrome. So Erland syndrome is when you see the numbers or letters on a page moving or falling off the page. And that can be helped with prism glasses, a color template laid over it. And I can't tell you what color because that's dependent on the person. But this is something they could look up, IRLEN, Erland syndrome. And very often people are told they have dyslexia when in fact they have something that could be that simple to help. So check that out before you panic and think we're in this harder zone. Assuming that's not it, and trust me, they literally see the letters move away in Erland syndrome, or like an earthquake, or jump around and reshape. It's very fascinating. So, you know, if it's not that and it's just typical reading dyslexia, then we slow down. Right now, if all you have is dyslexia, there's lots and lots of programs for that. I'm assuming you're here because you're dealing with a child who's got special needs and dyslexia,
Mm.
right? Most of the people that talk to us have more going than straight up, clear cut. We know how this is dealt with already out in the world, and there's lots of programs and videos and stuff for that dyslexia. If that's all it is, and that's very difficult, but it's just a thing, right? It's not multiple things. Then, you know, if you're doing neurofeedback, yeah, you would work on probably P6, parietal lobe, and maybe a P6 F7 combination. And, you know, you do a lot of practice and you break it down and get them to read out loud, get them to read silently, do small words, separate them out so they can't blend together. There's all kinds of stuff already available for that. But if you're autistic and dyslexic, or if you're cerebral palsy and dyslexic, or Down syndrome and dyslexic. Now we're talking about maybe in the case of autism, it's more frustrating for you, and you get angry with yourself because a part of you is maybe high functioning and another part of you is very low functioning. Let's say you're Down syndrome and you're kind of across the board functioning at the same level, and the dyslexia is just another thing to do, and you tend towards being social and not that frustrated by how hard it is to learn because you're adorable and everyone just thinks you're so adorable. You're being responded to in that way, and everyone kind of does the work with you in that way. So then it's different, and each of these is different. What I would say is we know what to do with neurofeedback. With play, the most important part is just reiterating what it should be without making it that they're broken or they're bad or they're stupid or they're exhausting. Um, and just exercise it, reteach it, break it, get rid of all the other words on the page, just get this one. And then that's one of the things I've done with dyslexia people is I'll have a stack of papers and each page just has one word that builds a story, right? So they read that word, then you move it, then they read that word, then you move it. But there's lots and lots and lots of information on dyslexia itself. What you have to think about is, how do I adapt it? So
To your
that'll
specific needs, yeah.
to your specific problem. Is it a sensory issue? Are you highly frustrated? Do you hate to sit? Do you like to work hard at things? Are you completely there, but your body's not? Often with cerebral palsy, for example, that can be the case. So, yeah. Yeah, you just have to adapt it according to the person. I guess that's why I gave all those other examples, so you fully comprehend the value of adaptation.
Yeah, and I think that idea of adaptation is sometimes, most of the time, seen as why would I allow this for my child? And I think that's such an obstacle. And maybe I always wonder, maybe once you do it once or twice, and then you see that it's not actually such a big deal to help and to adapt, then it becomes okay. But maybe from the outside, it just seems like, why should I? Why can't?
Right. Right. And that's a parent problem. That's not a child problem, right?
Ooh.
That's us wanting to turn them normal and they're not, and not accepting it, or, um, you know, Velcro shoes. Get your kids Velcro shoes if they have a hard time learning how to tie them. Get over it. Loafers, whatever. Remove as many of the learnings that are unnecessary as possible. Um, and that's what an adaptation is. And who do you do the adaptation for? You do it for you. As soon as you get over that you're trying to turn them into a normal person and go that, we're all different. Normal's a stupid word. Let's just get on with it. Let's have the child we have be the happiest and most wonderful this child can be. And when you get over that, then you want less work so that you can enjoy
Mm.
them. And an adaptation makes less work, right? But if
And
you're judging your child, then you'll say, why should I do it for them? Because you're trying to see a different thing than is really in front of you.
and I think you said the best way to see adoption. You said a really beautiful sentence earlier. You said, how how can I make this successful for them? And I think we should look at adoption that way, in the sense that we're not giving them, it's not a shortcut in that way. We're not cheating. No, you're just trying to put your child or whoever you're with in a successful position, because then success leads to more, confidence, which then leads to more changes and improvement. And you always say that, and it's true. And once we understand that, then hopefully we can let go maybe of what normal
Right.
is.
And value the shortcut. Value it because we do in all these other ways, we value the shortcut in all kinds of things we do. Like I like my little icon on my computer screen so that I can have a shortcut to get into the. We value the shortcut. Value it for your
Mm.
child. Um, you want less unnecessary learning if you want a successful child. That's the beautiful part. I used to say this to my son all the time. I said, don't you worry about it because you're learning slower than everyone, but you're continually learning and they're going to hit, 20 and they're going to get lazy. Now, there's going to be people that keep learning, but there's going to be a whole bunch that just get lazy and go, well, I learned what I needed to know. And
Yeah,
I'm sitting at the bar and I'm partying and I've got my job and you're going to catch up and you're going to pass them.
so
And then
true.
and we'd read the rabbit and the tortoise and the hare, and it really was true. It really was true, but it took till he was 35. But okay, so
Yeah, I see it with my brother even right now. Like, he has been non-stop. It's taking time. He's slow, but consistency, and he's
right,
just learning and learning and learning, and he's literally overpassed all of us in terms of, just gaining new skills,
skills,
whatever those skills are.
yeah.
He's definitely
And
done more.
another right, and another thing that's really interesting, if you comprehend what I'm sharing and you start talking to your children in the ways that I would talk to my sons, or at least close to that, you end up with kids who, and I'm talking autism right now, you end up with kids who were socially challenged. And because they were socially challenged, you explained so much and taught so much and broke it down so much that they become socially gifted. That doesn't mean they necessarily have a trillion friends.
Mm.
Um, but my son, Rye, has very few friends. He's loved by the neighborhood and invited places and stuff, but he's not so into the friend time. But his attitude and understanding about it and about people is pretty high end.
That's
He's
awesome.
really, yeah, and that came because it was his challenge,
Mm.
right? So we talked about dyslexia, but like always, we talked about all kinds of stuff. And we're close to where we should close. So is there stuff burning for you that you want to, as a teacher of parents or anything that's come up? You want me to just give a couple of sentences too?
Yeah, maybe just, yeah, you can close off with whatever you think you would want them
Well,
to
that's
remember.
not a question.
Listen, when you talk,
um,
so much goes through my mind, and then you throw a question at me. I can imagine that's how everyone, all the parents I talk to, I'm like, "Do you have a question?" And they're just like, it's exactly what I'm doing right now. I'm like, oh.
okay, I love that. That's perfect. Okay, that's what happens to the kids.
Mm.
Because Why do we only think it's us? It's a value to understand when it's us. And then when the child can't respond, when we ask a question, we're like, oh, I guess he doesn't get it. I guess he doesn't get
No,
it.
it's just
Or he
so
can't talk.
much.
It's so much. Now, for your child, it may be so much just to say, what's your favorite color? And sometimes when people ask me that, favorites are actually quite intense for a lot of people. They're like, oh, I don't want to be unfair to red, but I really am particular to green. Oh, but what about poor yellow? It's going to be sad, right? Especially for people that personalize everything. Like, yeah. So very often you have to give time and let people think, do I have a question?
Mm.
You know, can I answer a question? Can I even know what I'm thinking? I was busy letting information come in. I haven't changed tracks yet for putting information out because it's a process. So we'll end on this because it's one that is undervalued a lot with young special kids. Your child is getting information in. They have to process that information, change tracks because the receptive language is different than the expressive language. So what you receive is a different track than what you express. So they have to then think of it like train tracks. They have to change, turn that, pull
Mm.
that lever so the train goes on a different track and the answer comes out. You probably left the room already thinking they can't do it. So that's why very often we say less to the kids so they can respond. But it's not because they're not smart necessarily. It's you have to give space for these things to happen at a slower pace than they do for you. However, still explain fully your things and then slow down. Here's what I say, and this is what we'll close on. Act as if and then simplify. So act as if they fully understand everything. Because even if all the words are sounding like jumble because their auditory dyslexia is getting in the way, they hear the tone. They hear the
Mm.
beauty of the sound in your voice. They see the expression of explanation. They know that you're giving attention. All of that's benefiting anyway. So act as if, just in case they can understand. And then simplify. So la 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 la, like I just did with you. And now I'm closing on a soundbite. Act as if. So I acted as if you could follow me. And now with this soundbite, I'm simplifying, just like you'll want to do for your child.
Amazing. Awesome. Thanks,
Happy
Lynette.
Ramadan.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Bye.